what's the budget stalemate all about?
It's about having more demand for state services than money coming in to pay for them.
And as we'll show you in the next 2 minutes, the dispute centers on healthcare for the poor.
But let's start with the state budget deficit.
Over the next 2 years, if nothing changes, Minnesota's taxes and fees should bring in about $34 billion.
Coincidentally, that's almost exactly the same amount of money we spent over the last 2 years to pay for everything from schools to public safety to healthcare for the poor.
So you'd think that would work out perfectly, right?
Unfortunately, no. Costs are going up quickly thanks to increased demand for state services and the skyrocketing price of all that health care.
That means if the state wants to keep on providing all the same services for the next 2 years, it would cost $39 billion, about $5 billion more than it did for the last 2 years.
So that's what people mean when they say Minnesota is facing a $5 billion projected deficit.
If nothing changes, we'd have $34 billion coming in and $39 billion going out.
Luckily, the budget proposals from DFL Governor Mark Dayton and the Republicans who control the legislature aren't $5 billion apart.
They've already found some common ground. For instance, they've agreed to delay a $1.4 billion payment to schools. Again.
That's an accounting trick the state used to help balance the last budget, too.
They've also agreed on some other cuts and on the relatively tiny budget for the State Department of Agriculture.
So after those shifts and cuts, Dayton wants to spend about $36 billion.
That means he needs $1.8 billion in new revenue.
And Republicans in the legislature passed a budget without any new state revenue.
They want to stick with the $34 billion that will come in if taxes and fees remain unchanged.
So that's why they haven't reached a budget deal yet.
But on many parts of the budget, Dayton and the Republicans aren't all that far apart.
$100 million here.
For K-12 schools.
$200 million there.
For higher ed.
But here's where the big dispute is.
Health and Human Services.
Dayton wants to spend about $1.3 billion more than Republicans in that area.
These are programs that provide health care and other support to the poor, the elderly, and the disabled.
Health and Human Services represents about a third of the state budget, and it's growing at a rapid rate.
As we mentioned earlier, that growth rate is a big reason Minnesota is facing a deficit to begin with.
Republicans want to slow the growth significantly because they say it's not sustainable.
Dayton says that will hurt the people who rely on those programs.
And he wants to raise taxes on high-income Minnesotans to help maintain the programs.
So that's what we mean when we say the stalemate is really all about healthcare costs.